The cameras were rolling as Trump snapped, demanding that Obama leave the stage. But Obama didn't budge. Instead, he delivered a line that instantly turned the room against Trump. The East Room of the White House was glowing under chandeliers, marble floors gleaming, and cameras lined along the walls. Every seat was filled. Senators, governors, ambassadors, and journalists sat shoulder to shoulder. They weren't just there for speeches about unity. They had come to witness two presidents, one former, one current, sharing the same stage. The air was thick with tension. Guests leaned in close, whispering quickly before falling silent again. Washington had seen drama before, but this night already felt different. Obama, calm in his dark suit, was set to speak after dinner, while Trump sat at the head table, stiff and uneasy, his aides clearly nervous. The cameras never stopped following him. Everyone knew sparks might fly when the two men stood together, but no one predicted how explosive it would become. The event had been billed for weeks as a show of unity, with invitations promising speeches about cooperation and America's democratic strength. Yet the irony wasn't lost. One staffer was overheard joking that calling it Unity Night was like asking fire and water to shake hands. At first, everything seemed smooth. Dinner passed with light conversation about policy, global partnerships, even football. Cameras caught moments of laughter, the clink of glasses, and smiles that looked almost staged. But beneath the surface, unease lingered. Reporters typed frantically, eyes darting between Trump and Obama, waiting for something to break. That moment came quickly. When Obama finally rose to speak, the room shifted. Some applauded warmly, while others looked straight at Trump. Obama's words came steady and deliberate, his familiar style. He spoke about America's resilience, the duty of leaders to put country above pride, and the importance of protecting stability over ego. His voice carried calmly through the East Room, every word landing with quiet authority. "History won't judge us by how loudly we shout," Obama said, scanning the room, "but by whether we listened, by whether we chose courage over chaos, unity over division." Some guests nodded in agreement, while others pressed their lips tight, uneasy. Everyone knew exactly who his words were aimed at. Trump shifted in, his chair drumming his fingers, his gaze narrowing. His aides traded nervous glances. Obama pressed on, calm but cutting. "This nation is greater than one man's pride, stronger than any single personality, and it will endure as long as..." We remember that truth. The atmosphere thickened. Even seasoned politicians leaned in, bracing for Trump's reaction. The cameras tightened their focus, sensing the moment. Then, suddenly, Trump shot up from his seat. His chair screeched across the marble, the sound slicing the silence. He jabbed a finger at Obama and barked, "Get out!" The words exploded through the room. Gasps echoed. Journalists scrambled to capture every second. Senators froze, forks suspended. A European diplomat whispered, stunned, "Did he really just say that?" Obama didn't move. He held Trump's stare, silent, unshaken. The stillness was powerful, commanding the room without a single word. Time seemed to pause as everyone waited for what came next. Trump's aides rushed to his side, whispering frantically, but the damage was done. The cameras had caught it all. The East Room, so often a stage for history, was now brimming with tension, sharp enough to cut. What had been promoted as a night of unity had turned into something raw, unforgettable. Yet the most remarkable moment hadn't even happened. The room still buzzed with shock, reporters whispered furiously, aides shuffled in panic, and guests avoided one another's eyes. It wasn't just that a sitting president had shouted, "Get out!" at his predecessor. It was how unfiltered it was, the kind of spectacle one could script seared instantly into memory. But Obama remained steady. His hands rested lightly on the podium, his posture relaxed, his face composed. He had dealt with hecklers, critics, and crises before. This was no different, except for the weight of where it was happening and who stood across from him. Instead of raising his voice, he leaned toward the microphone, his tone calm, almost gentle. "Mr. President," he began, eyes locked, on Trump. "With all due respect, this room doesn't belong to you," Obama said evenly. "It belongs to the American people." The silence that followed was heavy. Every ear strained for his next words. Even a cameraman in the back lowered, his rig for a moment, stunned by the sharpness of the reply. "I was invited here, just as you were, to speak on unity," Obama continued. "And if unity makes you this uncomfortable, maybe that says more about where we are as a nation than anything I could say tonight." The line cut through the tension like glass shattering. Murmurs spread across the tables. A senator shook her head slowly, whispering, "Wow." A group of students pulled out their phones, recording history as it unfolded. Trump stiffened, lips pressed tight. He motioned toward his aides, clearly signaling to cut Obama's mic. But no one moved. Who would risk silencing a former president? Live on air, Obama glanced at the crowd, then locked eyes with Trump again. "You can ask me to leave," he said, calm but resolute. "But you can't silence what needs to be heard." The East Room erupted in applause. Thunderous, unrestrained, even with guests standing from their seats. The roar echoed across the marble walls while aides scrambled in panic. Obama raised his hand slightly, signaling for calm, his composure, only amplifying the gravity of his words. "This isn't about me," he said, his voice softening. "And it isn't about you. It's about families watching tonight. Families tired of leaders turning politics into a grudge match. Families who don't care about insults or power plays. They care about whether their kids are safe, whether their parents can afford health care, whether their voices matter." Trump shifted again, furious, but the applause swelled louder. Even hesitant guests joined in, emboldened by the moment. "The truth, Mr. President," Obama leaned forward, his words deliberate, "is that history won't remember how loudly we shouted at each other. It will remember if we stood up when it counted, if we chose dignity over chaos, if we built something lasting instead of leaving behind nothing but bitterness." The room quieted, not from fear, but respect. Every word landed like a drumbeat. "You're here to embarrass me," Trump barked, his voice breaking through the hush. "I'm here to remind you," Obama replied without blinking, "that the presidency is bigger than one man's pride, bigger than mine, bigger than yours. And the moment we forget that, we all lose." The room was electric. Even those who disagreed with Obama politically couldn't deny the force of his delivery. He hadn't shouted, he hadn't insulted, he hadn't performed. He had simply spoken, and the words carried their own weight. Cameras zoomed in on his calm, unshakable face. And outside those walls, social media was already erupting, clips spreading, hashtags rising. Millions of Americans weren't just watching. They were witnessing a moment they'd never forget. The mood in the East Room shifted. Guests leaned in, hanging on every word. Staff froze in place. Even Trump's aides looked uncertain. Step in or let it unfold. Obama adjusted the microphone slightly. "You can shout all you want," he said, his voice calm but cutting. "But leadership isn't measured by volume. It's measured by character." Applause thundered again, louder than before. Some stood to clap, others stayed seated but joined. In? The sound impossible to ignore. Trump's face flushed red, his jaw tight. He tried to speak, but the applause swallowed his words. Obama waited patiently, hands resting on the podium, until the room settled. Then he closed this part of his address. "My message tonight is simple. We don't heal this country by tearing each other down. We heal it by remembering we all serve something greater than ourselves." The words hung in the air like a challenge no one could dismiss. But this was only the beginning, because Obama's next response would ripple far beyond that room, shaking the nation itself. The applause had barely faded when Trump lurched forward, gripping the edge of the table as if bracing for a fight. His face was flushed, eyes darting between the cameras and Obama. For a man who thrived on spectacle, being overshadowed in his own White House was unbearable. "You think you're some kind of saint, don't you?" Trump shouted, his voice cracking through the chamber. "You walk into my house and act like you've got all the answers. Let me tell you something. I'm the president, not you. Not anymore. Me." The words ricocheted off the walls. Gasps spread across the room. A State Department official covered her mouth. 2 reporters from the Boston Globe scribbled furiously, their pens nearly tearing the page. Obama didn't reply at first. He stood motionless, calm as stone, letting the rage burn itself out. His stillness only sharpened the contrast. Trump's fury against Obama's composure. "You had your time," Trump barked, pointing at him. 8 years, and what did we get? A mess. And now you come waltzing back in here like some savior? Get out! I said get out! His voice rose to a near scream, echoing against the marble. The audience stirred, uneasily. Senators from both parties fidgeted. A guest from Dallas muttered under his breath, "This is madness." Cameras zoomed in, capturing Trump's trembling hand, Obama's unflinching face, the clash of 2 legacies unfolding live. Finally, Obama spoke. His tone was quiet, deliberate. "Mr. President, the White House doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the American people, and they deserve better than this display." The words only stoked Trump's fury. He spun toward the audience, throwing his arms wide. "See this? See what he's doing? He's trying to humiliate me on national television. It's disgraceful." A senator from New Mexico half rose, then sank back down, unsure whether to step in. No one wanted to be the first to touch this collision of egos. Trump slammed his hand on the table. "Security! Where are you? I want him out!" But the Secret Service stayed still. They exchanged wary glances, then held their ground. Forcing a former president out on live television wasn't just risky, it was unthinkable, and the room knew it. Trump had lost control, not only of the moment, but of the image he tried so hard to command. Obama didn't move. Leaning into the microphone, he spoke evenly. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm here because those who invited me believe this country deserves a conversation about unity, about dignity, about leadership. If that makes you uncomfortable, then maybe the question isn't about me being here. Maybe it's about why unity feels like a threat to you." The words landed sharp. Gasps rippled across the room, quickly followed by applause that swelled until it drowned out Trump's protests. "Sit down!" Trump roared, but his voice cracked against the wave of clapping hands. Obama waited, calm and still, until the noise faded. Trump, meanwhile, paced behind his table, muttering at his aides who had no answers. Cameras caught it all. The president, red-faced and furious, the former president steady, his words carrying the weight of reason. "Respect isn't demanded," Obama said, his tone firm yet measured. "It's earned. And right now, the American people are watching to see who understands that truth." Applause thundered again, louder, as if the audience itself had begun to choose sides. Trump shouted over the noise. "This is my presidency! My event. I won't be lectured by you in front of the world." Obama tilted his head slightly, not mocking, but almost pitying. "Your presidency, Mr. President, belongs to the people, not to you. That's the first thing every leader should understand." Whispers spread through the room. Guests who had expected a stiff ceremonial dinner now realized they were witnessing history. This wasn't just a clash between 2 men. It was a clash between 2 visions of leadership, one driven by anger and spectacle, the other by calm defiance and words built to last. Trump slammed the table again. "I said get out!" But this time, it rang hollow, desperate, swallowed by the silence that followed. And then, breaking through that silence, came a voice from the back. A governor called out softly, "Let him speak." At first it was just one voice, then another. "Let him speak," murmured a senator. "Let him speak," echoed another. Soon half the room was chanting it, voices layering together, filling the East Room until it was impossible to ignore. Trump froze. His eyes darted around, stunned. His own event was slipping out of his grasp. Obama stood silently, waiting. What came next would turn the confrontation into something no one in that room, or watching at home, would ever forget. Let him speak. Let him speak. The chant started small, scattered and hesitant, but quickly swelled into a tidal wave. Senators, governors, journalists, students, diplomats, voices rising together until the sound filled every corner of the East Room, drowning out Trump's furious shouts. "This is my house. Mine!" Trump barked, slamming his palm against the table. But his words vanished beneath the roar. The very event meant to showcase his authority had slipped out of his hands. The cameras captured everything. Trump, red-faced and raging. The crowd, united in defiance. And Obama, calm and still at the podium, steady as stone. He didn't raise a hand for silence. He didn't fight for control. He simply waited, letting the room find its own voice. When the chants finally faded, the silence that followed was charged with expectation. Every eye turned to Obama, waiting. He leaned toward the microphone. His voice, calm and deliberate, carried across the chamber. "We are standing in the people's house. Not one man's stage, not one party's theater. This is the people's house. And the people," he paused, scanning the crowd, "deserve to be heard." The room erupted again, but this time the applause was steady, unified, deliberate. It rolled like thunder, echoing off chandeliers and spilling into the hallways beyond. Trump waved his arms desperately. "Fake news! They'll spin this! They'll make it look like I lost control!" From the back, a journalist shouted, "Mr. President, they don't have to spin anything. The cameras are live!" Laughter broke out, not cruel but sharp, cutting through the tension with the sting of undeniable truth. Trump's face burned redder, the laughter wounding him more deeply than any insult. Obama stepped back into the pause. No one came here tonight to watch two men shout each other down. They came because they believe this country is capable of more. They believe we can sit at the same table, even when we disagree, and find a way forward. He gestured lightly, toward Trump. "I'll say it again. Leadership isn't about volume, it's about vision. You can command a room with anger, or you can guide it with dignity. One fades quickly, the other endures." The words landed with weight, resonating, far beyond the East Room. Social media was already ablaze. Hashtags trending, memes spreading, live streams dissecting each sentence. One tweet read, "Obama just turned Trump's house into his classroom." Trump clenched his fists, pacing furiously behind his chair. "This is a setup! A total setup!" he barked, pointing at the journalists. "You're all against me. Every one of you." But the crowd was no longer with him. Guests who normally avoided any hint of disloyalty were now openly shaking their heads. Some stared down at their plates, embarrassed, while others exchanged glances that silently admitted, "This is history, and we're watching it happen." A senator from Wisconsin leaned toward a colleague and whispered, just loud enough for a nearby mic to catch, "I've never seen anything like this." He's unraveling. Obama didn't retaliate. He didn't mock. He simply waited for the noise to fade before speaking again, his voice calm and steady. "Anger is easy. Blame is easy. But when the anger fades, when the shouting ends, what will you have left? What will history remember? That you shouted the loudest? Or that you chose to rise above it?" For a moment, the room was frozen. Even Trump fell silent, as though the weight of the words had landed somewhere he couldn't shake. The cameras zoomed in, Obama at the podium, composed and deliberate, his words carrying like a steady drumbeat. Trump, in contrast, sat rigid, lips pressed tight, his flushed face the picture of a man trapped, not by anyone else, but by his own loss of control. The energy shifted again. People leaned in, transfixed. Even skeptics who had come expecting little from Obama now found themselves pulled in. It wasn't about politics anymore. It was about two men, one clinging to anger, the other wielding patience. And the question hanging in the air was clear. Which would the country remember? From the press section, a reporter called out, "Mr. Obama, what do you say to those who believe unity is impossible under this administration?" Obama answered without pause, "Unity is never impossible. It's only difficult. And difficult things are always worth fighting for." Applause filled the room once more. Aides on both sides shifted nervously, unsure how to contain the momentum building in real time. Trump muttered under his breath, but his words were drowned in the noise. The clash had become more than egos. It was turning into a defining moment, one destined to ripple far beyond those walls. Outside, the world was already reacting, the frenzy spilling across news feeds and social media faster than anyone inside could imagine. The East Room now felt more like a courtroom. Every eye weighed the two men, every breath suspended between Trump's fury and Obama's calm. The contrast was striking. Trump fumed. Obama stood like stone, steady, deliberate, unshaken. And then Obama did something unexpected. He let the silence linger. He didn't rush to fill it. He knew silence, if held long enough, could be louder than words. Slowly, he swept his gaze across the room, meeting the eyes of senators, governors, students, staffers, reminding them without saying, "This isn't about us. It's about all of you. Finally!" "The presidency is not a crown," Obama said, his voice low but cutting through the chamber like a blade. "It's a responsibility. And sometimes responsibility means hearing things you don't want to hear." Murmurs spread. Some guests nodded, others stayed frozen, afraid to be caught on camera. But the energy had shifted. The room was tilting toward Obama. Trump slammed his fist on the table. "You're not the president anymore, Barack! Nobody voted for you this time! Nobody wants to hear you preach!" Obama didn't flinch. "And yet, here I am," he replied evenly. "Because Americans still believe in decency, still believe in dialogue, still believe in dignity." The crowd stirred again. A senator whispered, "That's going to be quoted forever." Trump's face darkened. "Don't lecture me about dignity. I built this country back up. You left it weak. You left it broken? Everyone knows it." Obama shook his head slightly, almost with pity. "Mr. President, strength isn't measured by how hard you pound the table. It's measured by whether you lift people up or tear them down. And right now, the country is watching a president confuse intimidation with leadership." The line hit hard. Gasps spread. Even a few Republican senators exchanged uneasy looks. Trump turned desperately to the audience. "You see, he's disrespecting the office, disrespecting me." From the crowd, a voice cut back. "Respect has to be earned." Murmurs erupted, swelling around the room. Obama let the moment breathe, then leaned into the microphone, voice steady but edged with steel. "I spent 8 years in this office. I know the weight of it, the sleepless nights, the crises, the loneliness of leadership. But I also know this. You cannot lead a nation if you are ruled by your temper. You cannot unite a country if every criticism feels like an attack. Leadership requires patience. It requires humility." The East Room went silent. You could hear the whir of cameras, the scratching of pens. Trump muttered angrily into the mic. "You think you're so perfect. You think you never made mistakes." Obama shook his head. "I made plenty." But the measure of a leader isn't whether he makes mistakes. It's whether he learns from them. And the measure of a nation isn't whether it has disagreements. It's whether it can rise above them. The words hung in the air, heavy and unshakable. This wasn't just a speech anymore. It was a lesson unfolding in real time. Trump shot to his feet, his chair clattering backward. "This is over," he shouted, motioning for aides to clear the podium. "I won't let him humiliate me in my own house. But the Secret Service didn't move. Watchful, yes. Ready, yes. But motionless, forcing out a former president, especially one invited to speak, was unthinkable. It would have been political suicide to push further. Obama leaned into the microphone one last time. With all due respect, Mr. President, the people watching tonight aren't judging me. They're judging you. And tomorrow, the question won't be, what did Obama say? It will be, how did Trump react? The crowd gasped. Trump froze, his face twitching with fury. But for the first time all night, he had no response. His silence thundered louder than his shouting ever had. Reporters hammered at their keyboards. Social media lit up instantly. Hashtags flying, clips spreading. Everyone knew that soundbite would dominate headlines by morning. The people aren't judging. Me? They're judging you. Obama took a slow sip of water, calm and composed, as if nothing had rattled him. Setting the glass down, he added, "The presidency is temporary. Character is permanent." The East Room erupted. Applause thundered as guests rose to their feet. Not everyone clapped. Some sat stiff, arms crossed. But the overwhelming roar drowned them out. Trump clenched his fists, his eyes darting frantically around the room in search of control. But it was gone. Obama had seized it, not through force or fury, but through quiet authority that rang louder than any shout. The East Room was no longer Trump's stage. It had become Obama's classroom, and America was listening. Outside those walls, the country was already reacting in real time. News tickers blazed, timelines exploded. The clash had grown bigger than anyone inside could have imagined. The air vibrated with tension. Chandeliers glittered overhead, cameras hummed steadily, and every person in that room felt it. Something irreversible had just happened. And then came the line, the one that would echo for decades. Obama straightened, leaned slightly toward the microphone, and with surgical calm declared, "You can tell me to leave, but history will remember who told the truth and who tried to silence it." The words landed like a final strike. For a full second, nothing stirred. No cough, no shuffle, not even the hum of a camera. The silence was total, devastating. Trump's jaw clenched. His body stiffened with rage, but still, no reply came. For once, there was no comeback. That silence broke the dam. The room exploded, applause crashing like thunder. Guests leapt to their feet, pounding tables, shouting in approval. The roar was so loud, the sound system distorted. Obama didn't raise a hand to quiet it. He let it wash over the room, a tidal wave shaking the walls of the White House itself. And no, the far end, university students stood with fists in the air, phones raised high, recording what felt like the most important moment of their lives. A senator leaned to a colleague and whispered, "That line will be quoted for 50 years. Trump tried to cut through, waving his arms. "Fake! All fake!" he shouted, pointing at the press. "They'll spin this. They always do." But it didn't matter. The crowd was no longer his. The applause had already sealed the moment into history. Obama hadn't just defended himself. He had turned the clash into something larger. Dignity against rage, reason against reaction. As the noise began to settle, he spoke again, his voice cutting gently through the air. This country deserves better than shouting matches. It deserves leaders who can disagree without trying to erase one another. Because the truth is, America isn't about one man, or one party, or one election. It's about the people, and the people are watching. That line struck deep. Faces in the room shifted toward the cameras, suddenly aware that millions of families in kitchens, living rooms, airports, and diners were watching in real time. Every word was being heard. Every moment was already replaying across social media. Aides clustered nervously at the edges, unsure whether to act. The Secret Service stood still, statuesque, unwilling to ignite the powder keg. Trump barked orders at them again, but they didn't move. The applause refused to fade. It rose and fell in waves, as if the crowd itself couldn't let go of what it had just witnessed. Later, a governor from Oregon told reporters, "You could feel the ground shift in that room. Everyone knew. We were watching history." Trump slammed his fist one more time. "This is a disgrace! A total disgrace!" he shouted, his voice cracking. But it no longer mattered. His fury had already been eclipsed. Obama lowered his gaze, then lifted it straight into the cameras. "To the American people watching at home," he said softly, "don't let anger be louder than hope. Don't let fear shout down your voice. And never let anyone convince you that decency is weakness. Decency is strength." That was it. The line that would run across headlines, anchor desks, and late-night shows for days to come. The crowd surged to its feet again, applause thundering like cannon fire. For the first time that evening, it didn't feel like a dinner, or even a speech. It felt like a reckoning. Even those skeptical, Republican senators, White House staffers, sat quietly shaken. Not converted politically, perhaps, but unable to deny what they had just seen. Obama stepped back from the podium, folding his hands. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He didn't look triumphant. He simply stood there, the picture of composure as if to say, "The words speak for themselves. Nothing more needs to be added." And in that moment, the contrast was complete. Trump's fury, loud, hot, fleeting, burned itself out. Obama's words, cool, steady, deliberate, were already carving themselves into memory. Guests leaned toward one another, whispering almost reverently. A journalist scribbled in the margin of his notes, "This wasn't a speech. This was a verdict," Trump muttered again, pointing at the press pool, incoherent with rage. But no one was listening anymore. The cameras already had their story. The people at home had their moment. Obama stepped back to the podium for one last line. "I'll leave when I'm finished speaking," he said, calm as ever. "And when history looks back, it won't ask who shouted. It'll ask who stood with dignity." The applause was deafening. But beyond the walls of the East Room, in newsrooms, in diners, on phones and televisions across the country, the confrontation was already growing into something larger than either man. By the time Obama left the podium, the clash had escaped the White House entirely. Reporters typed furiously. Live feeds cut across half a dozen networks. Phones buzzed with breaking news alerts. On CNN, the chyron blared. Trump shouts at Obama. "Get out." Obama's reply. Stuns room. Fox News split its panel, some defending Trump's right to command his stage, others conceding the power of Obama's calm response. MSNBC simply replayed the moment again and again, each clip hitting harder than the last. Social media moved even faster. Within minutes, hashtags were trending. Hoax Obama reply. Roach get out moment. Roach decency is strength. A student's Sathuo shaky phone video from the back of the East Room hit 5 million views before networks even caught up. TikTok flooded with edits. Some set to dramatic music, others mocking Trump's outbursts beside Obama's composure. In Los Angeles, college students watching in a dorm erupted into cheers. In a Phoenix diner, truck drivers shook their heads over coffee. In Boston, a divided family watched together in silence, each feeling the sting in their own way. Newsrooms scrambled for context. Anchors asked experts what it meant for the presidency, for Obama's legacy, for Trump's. One historian compared it to Nixon's Watergate confrontations, calling it the kind of moment that defines how future generations remember both men. Another analyst said bluntly, "Obama didn't just win that room, he won the narrative." Trump's allies pushed back quickly. On Fox, a congressman accused Obama of hijacking an event meant to showcase bipartisanship. On Twitter, loyal surrogates typed furiously that Obama had disrespected the office by lecturing the president in his own house. But their defense was drowned out by the viral wave. Everywhere, the same sentence spread. History will remember who told the truth and who tried to silence it. By The next morning, it was on t-shirts, memes, church billboards, and posters in small towns. In Philadelphia, the city where the Constitution was signed, someone painted it across a mural overnight in bold letters. Inside the White House, aides scrambled to contain the fallout. One staffer reportedly muttered, "We've lost the night. This clip will play until next week." Trump paced the residence, furious, calling confidence and ranting about betrayal. According to one aide, he repeated the same words again and again. Fake, rigged, staged. But even in private, there was no undoing what millions had already witnessed with their own eyes. Obama, by contrast, Obama didn't linger. He left the East Room with a simple wave, shaking a few hands before stepping into the night. Outside, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. He gave only a brief reply. "I said what I needed to say. Now it's up to the American people." That soundbite, calm and understated, carried as much weight as his words inside. By midnight, late-night comedians were already sharpening their monologues. On The Daily Show, clips of Trump shouting, "Get out," were spliced against Obama calmly sipping water. Saturday Night Live writers rushed to build a cold open around the confrontation. Jimmy Fallon even joked, "It's the first time in history a room full of politicians actually wanted a speech to keep going." But for ordinary Americans, it wasn't comedy. It felt raw, unfiltered, and real. People debated it in bars, in grocery aisles, on buses. The mask had slipped. Power dynamics had been laid bare. And for many, the question was no longer about politics, it was about character. A teacher in Kansas told a reporter, "I tell my kids every day, how you handle anger says more about you than what you say in anger." Tonight, Obama showed patience. Trump showed the opposite. A retired factory worker in Ohio admitted, "I've voted Republican my whole life. But I'll tell you this, Obama looked like a leader tonight. Trump looked like a man out of control." The ripple spread everywhere, on cable news, talk radio, Facebook threads, clips replayed in airports, gyms, and hotel lobbies. The clash wasn't just news anymore, it was already drifting into folklore. By dawn, headlines blared across the country. The Washington Post, "Obama's words shake White House." The Boston Globe, "Decency versus anger. A night America won't forget." Even international outlets weighed in. The BBC called it an extraordinary moment in modern American politics. Le Monde in Paris described Obama's reply as calm thunder. Trump fired back on Twitter in the early hours, typing in all caps, "Obama was disrespectful. Fake news won't tell the truth. This was a setup, but the damage was done." Screens across America weren't showing his tweets. They were replaying Obama's calm voice again and again. History will remember who told the truth and who tried to silence it. Yet the real impact wasn't in the headlines or the hashtags. It was in how ordinary Americans processed the moment. In classrooms, factories, diners, and office break rooms, people weren't just repeating Obama's words. They were applying them to their own lives, treating that single sentence as a mirror for the country itself. In Cleveland, a morning radio station opened its lines to callers. The first voice, a grandmother who had lived through the civil rights era, spoke softly. "I've seen presidents shout before. I've seen leaders lose their cool. But what I saw last night was a man keeping his dignity, while another man tried to strip him of it. That spoke to me more than any policy ever could." Her voice cracked with emotion, and the host let the silence linger before moving on. In Phoenix, a group of factory workers crowded around the break room TV, replaying the clip. One man shook his head. "I don't even like Obama. Never did. But Trump screaming like that? He looked weak. Obama looked like the president, even though he's not." His coworker sipped his coffee and replied, "That's the thing. Being loud don't make you strong. It just makes you loud." In high schools across the country, teachers fielded questions from students who had seen the confrontation on TikTok and Twitter. In a Portland civics class, a young girl raised her hand. Why did the president get so angry if the other guy was just talking? The teacher paused, then smiled faintly. Because sometimes words reveal more than we want them to. And sometimes, the truth makes people defensive. The moment even reached the pulpit. In Dallas, a pastor told his congregation, "Decency is not weakness, it is strength." And last night, we were reminded of that truth. Congregants nodded, murmured agreement, some wiping away tears. On college campuses, the debate raged. At the University of Michigan, students packed into a political science lecture, arguing over whether Obama's reply marked a turning point or just another flash in the media cycle. The professor scribbled Obama's words on the board. History will remember who told the truth and who tried to silence it, and told the class, this isn't just rhetoric. This is a case study in leadership under pressure. But not everyone was celebrating. In rural Iowa, farmers sat at a diner counter, fuming over the coverage. "The media's making Obama look like a saint," one man complained. "They're just trying to tear Trump down." His friend pushed back gently. "I get that. But you gotta admit, Obama handled himself better. That's just the truth, no matter who you vote for." The first man stirred his coffee, silent. Across the country, in libraries, barbershops, laundromats, and living rooms, the confrontation sparked conversations. Some heated, others reflective, all circling the same question. What does leadership really look like? And who embodied it that night? Even beyond US borders, the moment resonated. A Canadian truck driver told a radio host, "We've got our own politics up here, but watching Obama stand his ground, it reminded me real leadership doesn't need to shout." In London cafes, patrons debated its symbolism. Some marveled. At Obama's poise, others shook their heads at Trump's volatility. Back in the States, polling firms rushed to measure the impact. Overnight surveys showed the usual polarization, supporters on each side unmoved. But among independents, something shifted. A slim majority said Obama's words reflected leadership, while Trump's outburst was described as anger, or simply, loss of control. For everyday people, though, her voice cracked with emotion, and the host let the silence hang before moving on. In Phoenix, factory workers gathered in their break room, replaying the clip. One man shook his head. "I don't even like Obama, never did, but Trump screaming like that?" He looked weak. Obama looks like the president, even though he's not. His coworker sipped his coffee and replied, "That's the thing. Being loud doesn't make you strong, it just makes you loud." Across high schools nationwide, teachers found themselves answering questions from students who had watched the confrontation on TikTok or Twitter. In a Portland classroom, a girl raised her hand. "Why did the president get so angry if the TV say other guy was just talking?" The teacher paused, smiled faintly, and said, "Because sometimes words reveal more than we want them to. And sometimes the truth makes people defensive." The moment even reached pulpits. In Dallas, a pastor told his congregation, "Decency is not weakness, it is strength." And last night, we were reminded of that truth. Congregants murmured in agreement, some nodding, some tearing up. On college campuses, debates ignited. At the University of Michigan, students packed into a political science lecture, arguing whether Obama's reply marked a true turning point or just another flash in the media cycle. The professor scribbled Obama's quote on the board. History will remember who told the truth and who tried to silence it, then told his class, "This isn't just rhetoric. This is a case study in leadership under pressure." Not everyone celebrated. In rural Iowa, farmers gathered at a diner counter, many loyal to Trump, venting about the coverage. "The media's making Obama look like a saint," one man grumbled. "They're just trying to tear Trump down." His friend pushed, back gently. "I get that, but you gotta admit, Obama handled himself better. That's just the truth, no matter who you vote for." The first man stirred his coffee, unwilling to answer. All across America, in libraries, barbershops, laundromats, and living rooms, people were talking. Some arguments heated, others thoughtful, but every conversation carried the same undercurrent. What does leadership really look like, and who embodied it that night? Even internationally, the moment echoed. A Canadian truck driver told a radio host, "We've got our own politics up here, but watching Obama stand his ground, it reminded me that real leadership doesn't need to shout." In London, cafes, patrons debated the symbolism, some marveling at Obama's poise, others shaking their heads at Trump's volatility. Back in the US, pollsters wasted no time. Overnight surveys showed the usual polarization, but independents told a different story. A slim majority said Obama's words represented leadership, while Trump's outburst was described as anger, or simply a loss of control. For everyday people, though, the polls didn't matter. What mattered was how it made people feel. For many, it reignited a question that had simmered for years. Do words still carry weight in politics, or have shouting matches and scandals drowned out the power of a measured response? In a Milwaukee grocery store, two mothers talked in the checkout line. One said, "I want my kids to see leaders who stay calm under pressure. Last night, they saw that in Obama. That's what I'll tell them." The other sighed, "I just wish the president we've got now could do the same." Even late-night conversations carried the weight of the moment. In a San Diego living room, a teenage boy told his father, "I didn't know politics could be like that. It felt like watching a movie." His father shook his head. "That wasn't a movie, that was real. And it showed us more about both men than any ad or campaign speech ever could." By the week's end, the confrontation had woven itself into sermons, debates, op-eds, classrooms, and dinner tables. Obama's reply wasn't just a line anymore. It had become shorthand for dignity in the face of rage. But inside Washington, where strategy often matters more than sentiment, the battle was far from over. Trump and his allies immediately began plotting to reclaim the narrative, setting the stage for a bruising war of words that would only push the clash deeper into public consciousness. In Washington, silence never lasts. By morning, the Obama-Trump confrontation was the only story that mattered. The White House communications team held emergency meetings before sunrise. Advisors clashed over strategy. Should they ignore it, spin Obama as disrespectful, or double down on Trump's anger? As strength? Trump made the decision himself. By 6 a.m., he was already on Twitter. Obama came to disrespect the presidency. Total disgrace. Fake media won't show it. Replies poured in, some supportive, many mocking, most replaying the very clip that undercut his spin. Cable networks fractured. Instantly. Fox News ran panels blasting Obama for grandstanding, calling the moment provocation, not leadership. CNN and MSNBC looped the clip endlessly, framing Obama's calm as statesmanship, a masterclass in composure. The country was split, but the narrative battlefield leaned Obama's way. His words were simple, repeatable, and resonant. Trump's defense relied on shouting, "Fake news." Obama's reply, "History will remember who told the truth and who tried to silence it," was already etched into the public mind. Behind the scenes, Republican strategists admitted their frustration. One congressman confided to a reporter, "We can't defend that clip. It's brutal. You can't outspin calm dignity." Still, party loyalty demanded a defense. Officials appeared on talk shows insisting Obama had disrespected the office, but their talking points sounded hollow against the raw footage. Democrats, meanwhile, wasted no time. Fundraising emails blasted out overnight with subject lines like "Decency is Strength" and "Stand with Obama." Donations surged. Volunteers printed shirts with Obama's quote, selling out within hours. Obama himself, though, stayed quiet. He didn't give interviews. Obama didn't post on social media. That silence only amplified his impact. The less he said, the more powerful his original words seemed. Political analysts compared it to the rope-a-dope of modern politics. Let your opponent swing wildly, while a single well-placed strike keeps echoing. Trump, by contrast, couldn't stay quiet. At a rally in Toledo 2 days later, he ranted for nearly 15 minutes about the confrontation. "He came into my house, he disrespected me, and the fake news says I'm the problem? No way!" he shouted. His supporters cheered, but they sounded more subdued than usual. Clips of the rally spread online, but when placed next to Obama's calm composure, they looked unbalanced, almost desperate. Talk radio lit up with callers. In Dallas, one man admitted, "I don't like either of them, but Obama looked like a man in control. Trump looked like a man losing it." In Florida, another caller pushed back. "Obama planned this. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted to humiliate Trump on his own turf." Both perspectives found audiences, but one was grounded in the undeniable reality of the footage. Late night shows piled on. Stephen Colbert quipped, "Obama didn't just speak, he taught a seminar. Trump didn't just shout, he failed the class." Memes exploded across social media. Side-by-side images of Trump, red-faced and raging, against Obama sipping calmly at the podium. The harder Trump fought back, the sharper the contrast became. In Washington, think tanks and scholars debated the long-term significance. A Georgetown historian remarked, "Moments like this become shorthand in American memory. Kennedy had, 'Ask not.' Reagan had, 'Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.' Obama may have just written his post-presidency legacy with one sentence. The stakes weren't just reputational, they were political. Polls showed independents, drifting away from Trump, citing doubts about his temperament. In one survey, voters were asked who looked more presidential during the exchange. 62% chose Obama, despite the fact he no longer held office. That number rattled the White House. Meanwhile, grassroots energy surged. A group of college students launched a campaign called Dignity First, hosting rallies where they projected the clip on massive screens. Civil rights leaders tied Obama's words to broader struggles for justice, reminding crowds that calm courage often triumphs over loud intimidation. Trump's team scrambled. They released edited clips, cutting Obama's remarks short to make them sound harsher. But fact-checkers dismantled them instantly, and the unedited footage spread faster than anything the White House pushed out. Even world leaders weighed in. A German chancellor's spokesperson told reporters, "We admire President Obama's composure. It is a reminder that dignity speaks louder than anger." Russian state media, meanwhile, spun the clash differently, framing it as proof of division and chaos at the heart of America. Obama didn't post on social media. That silence only amplified his impact. The less he said, the more powerful his original words seemed. Political analysts compared it to the rope-a-dope of modern politics. Let your opponent swing wildly, while a single well-placed strike keeps echoing. Trump, by contrast, couldn't stay quiet. At a rally in Toledo 2 days later, he ranted for nearly 15 minutes about the confrontation. "He came into my house, he disrespected me, and the fake news says I'm the problem. No way!" he shouted. His supporters cheered, but even they sounded more subdued than usual. Clips of the rally spread online, but when placed next to Obama's calm composure, they looked unbalanced, almost desperate. Talk radio lit up with callers. In Dallas, one man admitted, "I don't like either of them, but Obama looked like a man in control. Trump looked like a man losing it." In Florida, another caller pushed back. "Obama planned this. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted to humiliate Trump on his own turf." Both perspectives found audiences, but one was grounded in the undeniable reality of the footage. Late night shows piled on. Stephen Colbert quipped, "Obama didn't just speak, he taught a seminar. Trump didn't just shout, he failed the class." Memes exploded across social media. Side-by-side images of Trump, red-faced and raging, against Obama sipping calmly at the podium. The harder Trump fought back, the sharper the contrast became. In Washington, think tanks and scholars debated the long-term significance. A Georgetown historian remarked, "Moments like this become shorthand in American memory. Kennedy had, "Ask not." Reagan had, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Obama may have just written his post-presidency legacy with one sentence. The stakes weren't just reputational, they were political. Polls showed independence, drifting away from Trump, citing doubts about his temperament. In one survey, voters were asked who looked more presidential during the exchange. 62% chose Obama, despite the fact he no longer held office. That number rattled the White House. Meanwhile, grassroots energy surged. A group of college students launched a campaign called Dignity First, hosting rallies where they projected the clip on massive screens. Civil rights leaders tied Obama's words to broader struggles for justice, reminding crowds that calm courage often triumphs over loud intimidation. Trump's team scrambled. They released edited clips, cutting Obama's remarks short to make them sound harsher. But fact-checkers dismantled them instantly, and the unedited footage spread faster than anything the White House pushed out. Even world leaders weighed in. A German chancellor's spokesperson told reporters, "We admire President Obama's composure. It is a reminder that dignity speaks louder than anger." Russian state media, meanwhile, spun the clash differently, framing it as proof of division and chaos at the heart of America. Back home, families argued over dinner tables, offices debated by coffee machines, and pastors repeated Obama's line in Sunday sermons. The narrative wasn't confined to Washington elites, it was everywhere. And though Trump fought tooth and nail to reclaim control, every attempt only deepened the impression that Obama had seized the high ground with a single sentence. But the real weight of the moment wasn't in headlines or polls. It was in the lasting impression it left on ordinary people, and the moral lesson they carried from it. By the end of the week, the dust hadn't settled. It had hardened into something larger. The headlines moved on, the panels shifted to other crises, but the footage lived on. In small towns and big cities, in barbershops and grocery stores, in classrooms and union halls. Obama's calm words were replayed not just because they belonged to him, but because they felt universal. Something bigger, something worth remembering. In Pittsburgh, a group of community leaders met in a church basement. A retired steelworker pulled out his phone and played the clip. The room fell silent as Obama's voice echoed, "History will remember who told the truth and who tried to silence it." When it ended, he looked around and said, "That's not just about presidents. That's about us. Every argument, every moment we choose anger over listening. It's the same lesson." Heads nodded around the table. In San Francisco, a mother watched the replay with her teenage son. He asked, "Why did everyone cheer so much when he said that?" She smiled softly. "Because people are tired of shouting. They wanted to see someone stand tall without lowering themselves." The boy thought for a moment. "So, you don't have to yell to be strong?" She nodded. "That's right. Sometimes strength whispers." Even in Washington, where cynicism runs deep, aides admitted privately that they had been moved. A junior staffer on Capitol Hill told a friend, "I came here thinking politics was just strategy and spin. But watching that, seeing calm words, beat rage. It reminded me why I wanted to serve in the first place." The clash had become more than a viral moment. It was a story parents told their kids, teachers used in lessons, pastors wove into sermons. It wasn't just about Obama or Trump anymore. It had crystallized into a timeless contrast. Dignity versus rage, patience versus temper, truth versus denial. Trump kept trying to reclaim the moment, doubling down at rallies, shouting that Obama had disrespected him. His supporters cheered, but outside those arenas, the memory lingered differently. For millions, Trump's shouting had become the symbol of chaos, while Obama's composure represented steadiness. And once an image like that settles into memory, it rarely fades. Obama, for his part, never added more. He let the moment breathe. His silence became part of the lesson. He didn't need to explain. The words had already done the work. What that restraint, that refusal to pile on, only magnified the contrast. Months later, when polls asked Americans, When pollsters later asked which leaders Americans trusted most in a crisis, Obama's name surged near the top, even though he no longer held office. In focus groups, the East Room exchange came up again and again. One voter put it simply, "He looked like the adult in the room." But beyond politics, the lesson of that night seeped into everyday life. A father in Kansas reminded his kids during an argument, "History remembers the truth, not the shouting." A teacher in Oregon taped Obama's quote to her classroom wall, urging students to use their voices with care. The true legacy of that night wasn't about one man defeating another. It was a reminder: power doesn't always roar, and respect isn't demanded through fists or threats. It's earned through composure, patience, and the courage to hold your ground without losing your dignity. Looking back, the confrontation became a parable. Two men, symbols of two eras, stood under the same roof. One shouted, one stayed steady, and a nation watching from kitchens and diners drew its own conclusion about which vision of leadership it longed for. When future generations replay the clip, they won't just see a feud. They'll see a choice between fear and calm, between noise and meaning, between pride and principle. And maybe that's the truest lesson of all. History doesn't just remember what was said, it remembers how it was said. As the lights faded, in the East Room and the applause gave way to memory, one truth remained: strength is not in shouting. It's in standing tall when someone tries to push you down. Dignity doesn't make you weak, it makes you unforgettable. Obama's reply will echo for decades, not because it embarrassed Trump, but because it reminded America of something it had nearly forgotten. Leadership is character in motion. And if there's one message worth carrying forward from that night, it's this: when truth stands against fury, truth wins. If you believe in that lesson, join the conversation and subscribe. For more stories that reveal what real leadership, dignity, and character look like when it matters most.